if something looks different this week, it's because I went all in on my Halloween costume. I haven't shaved my beard in over a decade. In fact, my wife Abby, I don't think she's ever seen me without a beard. I'll have Lane bring up and post a photo. We were recreating a scene from Jurassic Park 2 where they were wrangling the T-Rex because our little guy is our little T-Rex. So he was our T-Rex. My wife and I were wrangling him, and I saw from the character that didn't have a beard. I'm like, you know what? I haven't shaved it in a while. I want to have some fun. So I had a baby face for a bit. It's already mostly back after just 5 or 6 days. So it's looking okay now. But I think my wife was more shocked than Teddy was at the baby face. So don't be shocked. It is still me. I promise. You'll know it's me by how cranky I am this week, because in multiple of our topics, when we talk about the Republican Party in this state, I'll have to admit, especially if you heard me on the radio this week, you know I'm not in a great mood. So hopefully Jason, Michael, can bring some happiness. John, I don't want to put that much on you. I know Chris isn't capable of it. So we'll see how this goes this week, but maybe we'll bring some balance. Maybe we won't. But speaking of our panel, let me introduce especially our guests. We've got Jason Bunting. He's the state representative in House District 106. He owns and maintains the family farm, also a trucking business. He's been a local elected official and also was the director for the Illinois Corn Growers Association. And Jason, I know we've had you in person, right? But it's good to have you on one of these regular episodes. What's going on?
Well, we're happy to be here. First time on Zoom. I think we did one here back in August of '04 down at Iroquois County, but happy to be here and hoping to provide some insight, maybe learn a little bit from Chris and Michael and John.
There you go. I like you said, learn from Chris, Michael, and John. Apparently, I'm just the host.
That's
I got
right.
nothing to add here.
That's right.
I mean, we're looking forward to hearing from you, Jason, especially our first topic talking about veto session. You had to live through it, so we're looking forward to your insights on that. We've got John Lopez. He's a regular contributor. Y'all don't know it, but John is regularly sending us intel and information, and occasionally we let him join us in person or on Zoom. So, John, glad to have you back. You're a policy expert, a reporter, and a content contributor. How's it going?
I'm doing great. Greetings from the Kane McHenry line here from Algonquin, Illinois, and looking forward to learning from all of y'all, including you, Collin. Especially after what happened on Tuesday, I think we're going to learn a lot from y'all. So let's get to it.
There's going to be some fire this week, that's for sure. All right, we got Michael, we got Chris. I know Michael had some moments last week where it was like, ooh, he's got some heat. Chris did pretty well. You guys ready this week?
Oh, yeah. Always ready.
Anybody who said that petition season ended on Monday is a liar. I want to put that on the record first and foremost. The petitions have not stopped. I've become a handwriting expert over the course of the last week. I've had cursive burned into my eyes trying to determine what's a valid signature and what's not. We need to get on with this. We need to have a quick episode, just like the good old days, so I can go back to looking at handwriting. Thank you.
Yeah, poor Chris. He thought he was done on Monday, but last week I had to break it to him that his work was not done. All right, as we mentioned, our first topic, as a matter of fact, all three of our topics to start this episode could frankly be a headliner for any episode. So we've got some juicy stuff to get to, but we've got to start in veto session. I want to go to my friend Dave Severson, state senator, who posted a pretty good recap of what happened in veto session, and then we'll get Jason's thoughts. And then I want to take these one by one, because there's a handful of things that happened that you and our audience should be aware of and should be talking about. But if you want an overview, Severson had a great post. House Bill 25, which was a massive new energy rate hike. We're going to talk about that. This increases rates by another $8 billion for working families throughout the state. And of course, Democrats are claiming, and the left is claiming that, oh no, you'll save down the road. They're focusing on the savings that they always promise us will come, but never seem to actually come. The bill comes. The savings never actually seem to arrive. But this time it's different, they promise. We also had a tax hike on manufacturers, which came because of decoupling. We'll talk about that shortly. We also had the transit reform, which led to toll increases, sales tax increases, and all sorts of things that would be paid by working families. More aggressive tax from the party that claims to care about working families. And then we had increases on small business health plans as well that we'll talk about briefly. So a lot of things happened. Jason, you lived through it. So give us your initial thoughts, and then we'll get into each of these things one by one.
So I will tell you, Grandma Bunting always said nothing good happens after midnight, and that's exactly what took place there. Thursday night into Friday, and the simple fact, we ended the spring session on June 1st about 2:30 in the morning. We did the very same thing on the last day of veto session. We ended in the House about 2:35, 2:40. I think the Senate ran till about 4:30 to pass the stuff that we had sent back over there to them. It's not good government. It's not transparency. Everything is wrong with this system. And I'll be quite honest with you. About 8 o'clock that night, reached out to Emmington to tell Tasha and the kids good night, and we'll see you when we see you. Talking to Tasha, she says, "Why don't you just plan on staying down in Springfield tonight?" By the time we closed at 2:35 in the morning, my blood pressure was pretty high. I was fairly ramped up, fairly perturbed on what took place over the last 4 or 5 hours. So I hopped in the car and headed home. I ain't too sure that I couldn't have drove to California. Colin, that's how upset I was. But yeah, I think someone had put a post out there that our last 3 days of veto session is going to cost our constituents and the citizens of Illinois about $10 billion. So this is going to be quite something to watch.
Yeah, let's get into them one by one and obviously open it up to all of our panel to talk about it. We obviously have to start with transit. I want to point to something put out by State Senator John DeWitt, one of the most thoughtful people we have down in Springfield. I said this on social media today, on Thursday as we're recording this, that if you lose Don DeWitt, somebody who wants to work with the other side, who wants to work collaboratively, and has been trying to do so on transit ever since this began, you've got somebody who's really bipartisan, who focuses on issues over anything else and solutions. When you lose him, you've done something wrong. And he had an op-ed in the Daily Herald, I believe it was, where he talked about how this is all tricks, no treats, leaning on the Halloween side, and talking about where this funding is going to come from and how suburban residents are going to shoulder most of the load. That's what's honked me off, and I've talked about that on social media. You're talking about an annual toll revenue increase of $800 million to $1 billion, only 8% of it coming from Chicago. So yet again, the prices are being paid by suburban residents. Those tolls are going to rise biennially up to 4%. Tied to the CPI, so they're going to keep going up just like the gas tax. The new governance structure basically yanks away power from the suburbs over Metro and over Pace. And based on how the appointments will be made, it's essentially going to be a 19-1 Democrat to Republican board, the way that it'll be constructed. There's not a lot to like in this, and especially when I say if you've lost somebody, even the Daily Herald, of all people, has posted with their editorial board saying, listen, we knew this needed to be done, but this way, this is how you decided to do it. I mean, that's again a sign that the Democrats' solution here wasn't necessarily the best solution. And I haven't even talked about the sales tax increase on the Chicagoland area. This is going to be rough for especially suburban residents, and you're not getting much for it. It's not like you're talking about significant improvements in Metro and Pace. This is to bail out CTA and make some minor improvements in Metro and Pace. You're giving up a whole lot to get not very much. And then obviously there's the downstate angle, which I'm sure Jason and Michael may share here on what downstate's going to pay here for this.
Well, I think the thing that makes it even more offensive is that you look at these, you've got CTA and the problems that they have financially. And then you look at some of these other pockets, the suburban one, we have Metro, downstate as well, especially in the, Metro East. And they figure out a way to make things work and pay their bills. And, things operate the way that they should. And then all these other entities are getting punished because CTA couldn't get their act together. It's up to all of us and other parts of the state to bail out CTA, including the suburbs. I mean, you guys are getting hosed more than anybody.
Well, but you guys, I know there's been some talk about how this is raiding the road fund, which pulls more money away from downstate, $500 million away from downstate. I mean, everyone's feeling the pain here, again, all to bail out CTA. So it isn't just the suburbs. I want to be fair, but of course, living in the suburbs, I'm being selfish right now.
No, you're right, Colin. You got to be selfish. I live in the suburbs too. And this, no matter how you cut it, no matter what you call it, $1 out of the taxpayer's pocket is $1 out of the taxpayer's pocket. And this is many dollars out. Increased tolls, a sales tax that's going to go up to a full 1% now. I mean, here in Kane County, voters rejected a public safety sales tax increase this past April. Remarkable given the Democratic sweeps across the suburbs, including Kane County. And yet now Springfield does this Halloween morning trick, no treat. And Daily Herald's right. Everybody's here right. This could have been done in a different way. As Steve Reek pointed out, State Rep Steve Reek out of Woodstock, You're throwing $2.5 billion at a $200 million problem. Just to quote a local state rep here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple questions about this beyond what we talked about. It's, how much was actually needed, and what have we seen? What reforms have we seen that we're going to get here? Because a lot of Republicans in Springfield rightfully said, show us what the reforms are, because what we see in this bill aren't reforms. They're mostly just yanking power away a tiny bit from Brandon Johnson, mostly just yanking it away from the collar counties. That's the reforms that nothing else is in writing here that we're actually going to see significant improvements. It's, we're going to have a study here or a commission there, and in a year you should try to do X. And that's what we're being promised in exchange for a significant amount of money. Marty McLaughlin made an interesting point. He did it, put out a statement 6 days after the vote. I don't know why it was so late, but his point was interesting. At a time when ridership is at an all-time low, this whole if you build it, they will come sort of concept is questionable. Like, I want people to take mass transit, but fewer people are going into the city. We have, lots of vacancies when it comes to commercial real estate, retail spaces. Like, you don't have as many people who need to take transit at this time, and yet now is the time where we're throwing $2 billion a year at the problem. There's a lot of questions around this that are swirling, and here we go. We're going to pay for it whether we wanted it or not.
Well, and I think the one thing that I hear downstate in the St. Louis Metro East area, that the reason why ridership is down and people aren't doing it is because they don't feel safe. And they hear the stories on the news of people getting robbed on the train, or, mugged or harassed, or, homeless people that are causing problems at the station, or, people that are clearly on drugs that are causing problems. So you can't just throw more money at it and expect like, the ridership's going to go up. You have to prove to people that, hey, we're making some changes here, so you feel more comfortable riding this. It's not happening.
The safety components of this bill are, I think, like a study and a commission, and hey, we're going to try to be better at safety. Like that's what they've said. It's sort of we threw the word in there a couple times, so we've solved the problem.
Yeah.
Jason, you were trying to get in. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, the frustrating part about Senate Bill 21 was the language that we voted on was something that was dropped in our lap 8 hours beforehand. I mean, we knew when we left in May, session was concluded, we knew that there was a transit issue, and back then it was a $770 million shortfall, and then all of a sudden here about 4 or 6 weeks ago it's only $222.30, and then we're going to talk about this delivery tax. We're going to talk about how we're going to raise all these taxes, and then we have to have a subject matter hearing, an executive on the House side, to read what's in this bill. None of this language was anything that was even discussed, so it was almost as if that we're going to look over here while we're going to try and slide this in here. It was totally infuriating and upsetting on how the whole process worked.
Yeah, well, and something that Severson posted in one of his other posts was part of this deal was no rate increases on the CTA or Metra. And so, like, we were told the whole way this was going to be a shared sacrifice. That's what we kept being told, that, Pritzker said it over and over. We've all got to share in the sacrifice. And yet you've got no fare increases for the people who are actually taking mass transit. You've got very little of this cost is being shouldered by Chicago. It was mentioned 8% of Chicago of the tollway tolls are paid by Chicago residents, mostly paid by the suburbs. They'll pay their portion of the sales tax, but the suburbs have a higher percent of population, so we will pay more of that. And then when you're yanking money out of the road fund, that's mostly coming from downstate. I mean, the amount of pain here felt by Chicago residents is significantly less than everybody else. There's basically no pain felt by those who actually take mass transit. This is not shared sacrifice.
And look, when you looking at what the reaction has been from people within the city of Chicago, a lot of the responses I've seen so far has been the ends justify the means. And I've seen a lot of back and forth on social media and in the media itself talking about like, well, transit got done, but what about all the things that were needed to get there? And the response from more progressive ideologues in the city of Chicago was like, well, it got done. It happened, didn't it? And I think that's a really short-sighted way to approach this issue, because sure, they were able to pass a bill in the middle of the night that fixes the transit problem. Sure, but shouldn't you expect better out of your government? Shouldn't you expect like an actual solution to the problem rather than just trusting them at their word and taking them at their word. And it seems like there's a little bit of a class issue here where people, more affluent people in the city of Chicago, are saying, oh, sure, we don't have to pay for it. And who cares if the rest of the state have to pay for it? We pay for some of their things too. And it's like, well, you're basically being subsidized by the rest of the state, mostly the suburbs in this case, in order to make sure that you can ride your red line train from Addison to Sheridan instead of walking that distance. Sure, good for you guys. But I think we need to look at the bill a little bit deeper. Sure, something got accomplished. And I guess the credit should be given for the fact that our government was able to do something for once in its life. But at the same time, what it's going to take for us to get to a position where we're going to make the CTA solvent isn't worth the juice isn't worth the squeeze at this point. So I think that from a philosophical standpoint, the Democratic Party and the left have to get out of this idea that well, we did something, guys, we deserve the credit for it, because no, I mean, what you're doing to get you to the point where we can make the CTA solvent just isn't going to be worth it in the long term.
Yeah, and you look at why we're in this position in the first place. How many stories have we talked about over the last couple of years of the CTA and their gross mismanagement of taxpayer dollars, whether it's overtime, whether it's financial controversies, obviously massive debt that they've built up. They haven't raised their rates, their fares since 2018, well before COVID. I mean, none of that is touched by this. None of that is resolved by this. We're just saying, okay, yeah, you wasted tons of taxpayer money. Here's some more. Like that is the frustration here, is could we see some reforms? Could we see some improvement for taxpayers before you just come back to the piggy bank and ask us for more money? But that's not the Democrats' way. Of course, as Welsh likes to say, they're the tax and spend Democrats, and they prove it yet again. A couple statements I want to point to, and then we'll let everyone give any closing thoughts. But number one, we mentioned downstate. Lee Ariano said it really well, talking about how this money that's swept from downstate and rural road funds to bail out Chicago Transit. But since we get $140 million back for rural public transit, we're told we got taken care of. That's what we've been told, right? It's okay. You're getting a little money back, and maybe next session we'll do something else for you. I mean, that's what the narrative was, is, oh yeah, you'll be fine. To those who are in downstate, which is 96 counties. I always love downstate, goes all the way up to the northwest tip of Illinois, but it's downstate, but whatever. And the last thing is just, we hear this all the time, that Democrats want to avoid regressive taxes. Pritzker said it. Democrats kept saying, oh, we're going to avoid those regressive taxes. Well, tolls are regressive. People have to drive to work. But the worst thing here is the sales tax increase. Darby Hill, state senator from by me, said it well. I mean, these sales taxes, what are you paying this? You're paying this on diapers. You're paying this on school supplies. You're paying this on things you need. That's what working families are going out and buying. And they're the ones paying this increase in the sales tax. This is highly regressive. I know people said, oh, they found the least painful way to do this by, moving money over and whatever else. I don't know if this is the least painful way. A broad increase on the sales tax on all people in the suburbs, including those working families who are struggling, that seems highly regressive to me.
And I think, go ahead, Chris.
In relation to what you said previously regarding the CTA, Collin, I think this is something that Republicans could have done better, and they still can make this argument, is that, for months and months and months, years even, while Brandon Johnson's been mayor, and even before him, but mostly while Brandon Johnson's been mayor, we've heard terrible story about the CTA board, about how incompetent it is, how a lot of this is at the feet of the mayor of Chicago. And I didn't really see a lot of that come out of the opposition during the course of this, because everybody knows Brandon Johnson's incompetent. The Democrats know this. There's a reason why Brandon Johnson won't go down to Springfield himself to lobby for any of his bills, because he knows it's going to be a detriment to it. So I think, if you can lean on the unpopularity of Brandon Johnson and his administration, I think you could actually be able to get a lot more leverage out of this, because it's one thing if we say that Democrats did this, okay? And we all know that there's an effect to that. But what's polling very well right now in every poll, public or private, whatever, is that Brandon Johnson's incompetent. So if you can point to Brandon Johnson's incompetence and say, listen, your state just bailed out Brandon Johnson because of his incompetence. You have to pay more when you're at the grocery store. You have to pay more when you're buying anything, because the mayor of Chicago can't get his crap together. And I think that's a pretty powerful message, and it resonates not only with Republican voters and moderate voters, it also will resonate with a lot of voters left of center because of his popularity being so vast.
Yeah,
well, Chris, it should resonate, but as we talk on the next topic, you're going to see that the national mood is what resonated with voters this week. And I'm sad to say, at this point, 2026, I think is going to be a carbon copy. And we'll get into that in a minute. But I'm just saying it should resonate, but for reasons we'll get into, it won't, because everybody's focused on Washington,
national politics. Yeah,
national
Michael,
politics, and the government shutdown.
Yeah, Michael, give your final thoughts, and then we'll shift to the next veto session.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've been talking about this transit issue being a problem for basically a year now. I mean, they were in session, earlier this summer. They kicked the can down the road, didn't do anything about it. They come back for veto. They're there for 2 weeks, and they passed this, after midnight. And there's no excuse. I mean, if you're a Democrat, if you're Welch or Harmon or any of these Democrats in leadership in Springfield, you should be lambasted for this stuff, because you knew it was an issue. You try to drop a bill at 2 a.m. And don't even let people read it. And it's like, you're in the super majority. You can do whatever you want. They could have passed this 2 weeks ago during the first week of veto session, but they would rather take the easy way out and kind of force feed this on the legislature than actually sit down and talk about what can we do to reform this and make it better. It's just, here's more money.
Yeah, well, it's always the Democrat solution in Illinois. This is a shift, but not really. It's just one quick thing I want to bring up that's related to transit, but it is a semi-separate topic, which is, ever since they passed it, Democrats have been actively trying to shift blame on this. I want to read you a couple quick things, and then maybe get Jason's quick thoughts on it before we go actually to the next topic. But when in the Daily Herald article where Pritzker was talking about it, he was like, asked about the increase to the sales tax. He was like, well, no, that's for the tollway board to decide. And if they want to do something different, it's the legislature that would urge them to do the hike. And then asked about the tolls. He's like, well, that's to pay for upgrades. That's not for this. And then here we go in his press release on this about the bill passing. I am pleased the legislation also avoids new broad-based state taxes on Illinois working families. It just moves money around, essentially, is what he said. Even Chris Welch on Patrick Finkston's radio show said the legislature didn't tax anyone. They gave authority to the RTA to tax to raise additional funds. I mean, they're counting on you, as in the average person in Illinois, to be too dumb to understand that they took money out of this pot here for transit, and then they raised tolls to fill that bucket up again. Like, no, we didn't raise tolls for transit. That's not what we did. And it was the RTA or the NITA. They raised your sales tax, not us. Like, they're counting on you to not pay attention enough. And they're actively pushing this. So if you're in Illinois, you've got to be aware of that they're trying to claim that they didn't raise tolls. They're trying to claim that they didn't raise sales taxes. And that's 100% a lie. But with the way the media is in the state, they may end up getting away with it. So you've got to be aware of that. Jason, any quick thoughts on that?
Well, there's a reason why they call it a lockbox. That money was not supposed to be used for anything but roads and bridges. And I saw your Facebook post here a couple of days ago, Collin, when you talked about how this is going to affect suburban families. I've got roads in the 106th district that need absolutely to be worked on and to be fixed and to be taken care of. And all we're doing is we're taking from these projects that we have to make lives better for the constituents in the 106, and we're moving up there to something that we may not even possibly use, to be completely honest with you. So, and it's just the way in which the process happened is just so frustrating and infuriating. I continue to say that it's the way I feel.
All right, we've talked a lot about energy on this podcast, so we maybe don't need to spend a ton of time on this, but as predicted, the energy bill passed. I say energy bill, I guess I should use air quotes, because it really is just a environmentalist bill that speaks like an energy bill, or is called an energy bill. But in order to get battery storage, we as taxpayers or as ratepayers, utility payers in the state, are going to get an extra line item on our bills, which will be roughly, $8 billion, I think I've seen as the estimates, in order to buy, construct, install, whatever, these batteries. And supposedly down the line, this will lead to up to $12 billion in savings. Again, they do this every time. I mean, I could bring it up on screen for the last, I don't know how many years since FIJA, let alone CJA and everything else. Every time they do these, this will save you $50 billion. This is going to save you $30 billion. Meanwhile, our tax bill or our utility bills are triple, quadruple, quintuple what they used to be. But they keep passing more bills that promise this time it'll be different. So I don't know. We've said a lot about this. I think here's what I'd say. When Goshen is coming out and applauding your bill with a press release, that's probably not a great look. But when I saw that press release, I chuckled. The vice president of manufacturing for Goshen, Illinois says, this is a bold step forward for Illinois' energy future. Probably tells you everything you need to know about who's happy about this bill and maybe who's not. And it's working families who shouldn't be happy. Anybody have thoughts about the energy bill that you haven't had a chance to share before?
I mean, I would just say, look at your bill, and then tell me that things are going the way that they should. And then you look at the bottom and it has mine, I have Ameren, and they list out all the different fines and fees that are issued by the state of Illinois as add-ons to my bill. And, it's 15% of my bill is add-ons from the state. And now it's probably going to be even more.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about energy. So if everyone's good on this topic, I can keep us going, but I just want to make sure everyone's had a chance to talk.
Well, prior to being a state rep, I was in local government on the county board. And this is another example of moving away from local control to state standards. And that is upsetting in my area. I mean, neighbors, in my opinion, neighbors need to be making decisions for other neighbors. We don't need Cook and the Collar counties to determine what's best here in rural Illinois. And this is just just like it was for wind and solar, 102nd General Assembly. They took away the local control, made it statewide standards. We're doing this for battery backups. The one good thing about this bill, and there is one good thing about it, is it lifts the moratorium on construction of nuclear. And that is just about where it ends. They say this is going to be a cost savings for our customers, our constituents. They could not be further from the truth. This was another thing that they pushed hard, they got it, and now we're going to have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, we've talked about this already if you watch this podcast, but June 1st is the next time you've got that sort of surge pricing, if you will, and it's already locked in. It's going to go up even more than it went up this summer. So if you're running for office or you're involved in politics, you need to be talking about energy. Kudos to the House Republicans. They put out a press release going after Harry Benton, Suzanne Ness, Katie Stewart, and Andy Nuri-Briel in 4 of the vulnerable districts for Democrats who all voted for this. They voted to raise energy costs on working families. That's what you've got to be talking about if you're running for office or involved in politics in Illinois. Use this bill. It's absolutely usable for us. We got to talk about it more. All right, we've talked about decoupling a few times. It did happen. Of course it happened. There was a predictable budget shortfall because Democrats back in May or almost June passed a budget that everyone knew was out of balance. They did it so that they could come back and blame Trump and say it was all Trump's fault that it was out of balance. And here we go. They did that. They blame the big, beautiful bill or the Working Families Tax Act, and they say that's the reason. And so some of the benefits that would have flowed down, especially to manufacturers in Illinois, they have now decoupled from those from the federal government. And so now manufacturers will not see those benefits. And so you see manufacturers speaking out on this. You saw TMA was very strong on this, very unhappy about how this hurts domestic manufacturing. It hurts their competitiveness. Kudos to Dennis Lacombe and TMA for speaking out. IMA did eventually speak out about it. They waited basically until it was done to say it was bad, but I'll give them credit. I guess they did finally actually speak out about it, talking about how it's going to strip away tax benefits that help manufacturers upgrade their equipment, expand their facilities, grow jobs. It's yet another blow to the state's manufacturing industry. Representative Joe Sosnowski said it well, that our state's an unattractive place to do business, which steals opportunities for our residents, and this will only drive even more job creators away. So another thing Democrats have done here, and this directly attacks our manufacturers, which they say, oh, we want to support our manufacturers, and yet when they're given every opportunity to do so, they're like, no, let's screw them. We need their money. If I covered it, looks like I covered it. All right. Chris, I know you're not going to let this next topic go by without talking about it. Democrats passed basically in the dead of night. No one knew it was coming. We kind of were shocked by it. But physician-assisted suicide, or I don't know what we're supposed to call it, but that's essentially what it is, has passed. I think it's terminally ill patients can obtain medicine to end their lives, I think is how they're trying to word it, because it sounds better to them that way. Listen, I honestly don't have a stand on this. I can see really good arguments against it. I can see some arguments for it. I'll be honest. It's a sort of a sticky issue, but anyone who says this is a clear-cut, obvious issue, they are lying to you. This thing has 17 different levels to it. It's super controversial, and it should have been decided in a public discussion, not snuck through in the dead of night. But here we are. It's sitting on Pritzker's desk, and he's deciding whether or not to sign it. Chris, you want to start? Go ahead.
Yeah. I woke up Friday morning to learn I lived in Canada, and that was the scariest thing that has ever happened to me in my life. It's upsetting because, like Collin said, this is not as clear-cut an issue as the advocates are making it out to be, and it's attested to by how close the roll call was in the Senate. It came within two votes of not getting passed, and there's some yeses on this bill that are completely incomprehensible to me, judging how some individuals have voted on previous legislation dealing with life issues, and they decided that assisted suicide was A-okay. There were some no's on this bill, which I thought were pretty interesting. I want to give a shout out to State Senator Willie Preston. He really came out against this. He really called out the Senate president and the presider of the Senate for not letting the opposition speak. Even from the Democratic Party was not allowed to speak on the Senate floor.
Yeah, they rammed it through. It was, yeah.
And the way they did this was strategic, because during the initial stages of this bill, or this debate during the initial session, there was some pretty strong opposition to it. There were witness slips filed. There were hearings that were attended by the opposition to this bill from within the medical community who said this was a violation of Hippocratic oath. And by shelving this bill until the final minutes of the veto session, it basically prevented the opposition from organizing itself again and taking a stand against this bill, which they knew this opposition was strong. The opposition to this was like a 5-to-1 disparity between opponents and supporters during the initial hearings of this. So they did not want to deal with that once again. So they push it through in the dead of night. They wring the arms of some state senators who are going out the door, who have nothing really to lose, to basically support this bill. And it's upsetting. And you know what? I'm going to put my faith in the man I should probably put no faith in. But the fact that even J.B. Pritzker, in his public statement regarding the bill, doesn't really sound that enthusiastic about signing this is a testament to how controversial this issue is. When J.B. Pritzker, who is perhaps one of the most liberal people in the entire United States when it comes to life issues, when even he is telling you that he needs to sit down and seriously think about whether or not he's going to sign this thing, that tells you how complicated this is. So shame on Linda Holmes and the Senate Democrats who have pushed this through in the dead of night for not allowing there to be an actual debate over a serious issue like assisted suicide. It's frustrating, and I pray to God that J.B. Pritzker will have a moment of clarity within his conscience to say, no, I am not going to sign this bill, and we are actually going to have a reasonable debate about this issue.
Well, State Rep Bill Howder, who has a medical background, so he's somebody that I certainly trust. The most compelling point that I have heard on this, in the against side, is that he said this: the very foundation of medicine rests upon the principle of do no harm. I mean, you're putting physicians in a really difficult spot, and I understand that they're not required to do this, but the way the state of Illinois works, they're at least going to be required to talk about it, to give them options, because that's how it is. Even if you don't perform abortions, you still have to tell people where they can go get one. Like, you're still putting these physicians in a really difficult spot. And every other state or country that's put this in place, they go back the next year and the next year and the next year. They keep limiting things and tweaking things. So there is definitely a slippery slope argument here too. Again, I'll admit I don't know enough about it to take a strong stand, but there are strong arguments against this, and those never really got to see the light of day. All right. Well, it's as we said, we got some heady topics this week, and that's just one of them. That's just veto session. I'm sure there's more we could talk about, but we have talked a lot about veto session. So if y'all are all right, I'm going to move us to the next topic. There was. Go ahead, Jason.
Before we leave veto session, there was one Republican bill that passed out of the House, and that was one that I had brought forth for a local school district in the 106 to extend a referendum. So I think we voted on 25 bills in the House there for veto session, and we got one Republican one through. And I think when we did the roll call vote on that, everybody was cheering, not because I brought a bill together, but because once we got that baby done. So it was
Republicans actually got to run a bill.
We got one through. It was the very last done, but we were able to do it.
All right. Well, congratulations.
Great work.
It's nice to see such a brilliant sign of bipartisanship out of Democrats in Springfield. 24-1. That ratio sounds like how much they want to gerrymander a congressional district, too. All right, let's go to Tuesday's election results. There was not an election Tuesday in Illinois, but there was in a number of states around the country. And there's no way to put this other than it was not good for Republicans. Now, to be clear, it was a lot of elections in blue states where Republicans were, just by paper, expected to lose. So this isn't as dark as maybe some are saying. However, I'm always about expectations and did you over or underperform? And even though these were mostly states that we were supposed to lose, in pretty much all of them, we did underperform. So it's not as bad as some are trying to claim, but let's be real, it's really bad. You saw a lot of swings pretty strongly against Republicans. I look at Virginia, where they now have a Democratic supermajority for the first time in recent memory. You compare 2025 to 2021. I mean, Youngkin got 1.6 million, almost 1.7 million votes in 2021. Meanwhile, the Republican this time around only got 1.43. It's a drop of 200,000 votes. Meanwhile, the Democrat overperformed by almost 400,000 votes. You are seeing what we've been talking about for the last few weeks here, which is Democratic enthusiasm is very, very high. Enthusiasm on the Republican side is low, and we're spending a crap ton of time fighting each other. We'll talk about that in our next topic. And so as a result, you are seeing what this could portend for next November if we don't get our crap together. This is not a good sign. We are not headed in the right direction, Republicans. And if you put your head in the sand and say, no, it's fine, you are going to have a really, really bad election night next November. Take heed of this and make a change. You've got a year now, a year and a day. We have time to turn this around. But if we don't, we are going to have an awful November next year. What do you guys have? What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
To couple with what you just said there, Collin, the state that was supposed to be the most competitive was New Jersey and the governor's race with the open governorship. Murphy, like Youngkin, was term limited, and most polls had that within single digits. Mm-hmm. The final number was over 13 percentage points. Good. But here are some startling statistics about what Republicans are going to have to do in Illinois next year. Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican nominee, he received over 120,000 more votes than he did when he ran unsuccessfully in 2021. He also exceeded what Governor Murphy received. So what happened was the Democrats pulled in 450,000 additional votes, and that's what created the 13 plus percentage points loss. And it all comes, and also just like Virginia, New Jersey's legislature is now supermajority Democrat. And even the bellwether counties, I was checking some of them, like Morris County, they swung Democrat, not by much. They're purple, but it was by enough. So the independent voters were lost, and it's all about not so much about messaging. That's a big part of it, but also where did the Democrats get all these additional votes? It cannot be all the anti-Trump factor, could it? Or is it just a matter of they've got such a machine ground game like we saw here in Illinois on April 1st? And this better be a wake-up call. Some people are trying to minimize this. It's all blue states, but it's the margins that are huge. If you look at a scatter plot of the state of Virginia, every county moved to Democrat on this past Tuesday. Yep. So that's just,
and the reasoning is pretty clear. You look at exit polling, you look at what people are talking about. Yeah, Trump is definitely coming up. He's definitely a factor. But the biggest factor, it's affordability. I don't know how many times we've got to say it on this podcast before people start actually listening and believing us. You heard Pritzker even talk about it. He said they had a great day, and it was because of that, because of affordability. Democrats are not only talking about it, they're doing something about it. And he was right on this when he said, Donald Trump promised that he would lower prices. That was a big reason why he got elected. And while, yes, some things are better, like gas prices, they are better than they were under Biden. But ask anybody if they feel like their life is more affordable today. We talk about that when it comes to crime. Democrats like to throw all these stats at voters. Crime is down, but we say, do you feel safer? And the answer is no. That's in our favor. But you know what? Ask them this question on affordability. Do you feel like life is more affordable in the last year? The answer is emphatically no, whether you agree with it or disagree. To the average voter, they don't feel like it's more affordable, and some of the stats do back that up. I mean, listen, you talk talk about this, there's a study posted by a friend of mine on Facebook, Gabe, who said he's in Ohio, I think it is, but he posted something nationally. And a plurality of Americans over the age of 50 believe that the current state of the economy is fairly good. Meanwhile, Americans aged 18 to 49 overwhelmingly believe it's fairly bad or very bad. All right, look at inflation. I know, Michael, you talked about how inflation was less than expected, but inflation was still higher. It still went up. Yeah, we said it. We expected it at 3.1, so yay, it's at 3, but it was still higher than what we wanted it to be and what we were targeting. I mean, this is hitting people's pocketbooks, whether it's tariffs or anything else. The reality is life is not more affordable right now for voters, and if that continues to next November, Republicans are in deep trouble. We are elected because of pocketbook issues. We are elected because we promised that we would make things more affordable. If we don't make good on that promise, we're going to get wiped out. This is a wake-up call to Republicans, especially national Republicans, that you can't just promise us that tariffs and whatever else are going to do good things a year from now or 2 years from now or whatever. People need to start feeling improvements now if you want to see a single Republican get reelected in this country next November.
I think each election, like the big three of Virginia, New Jersey, New York, each represents different problems within the Republican Party right now. In a place like Virginia, you saw the enthusiasm gap. The Democrats were extremely riled up in Virginia. You had a candidate on the Republican side who did not garner as much energy and interest around her as much as Glenn Youngkin did. And part of that's because of Virginia's stupid laws that won't let you have consecutive terms. But even still, the Republican Party had no energy around them, and the Democratic Party had the demographics and the energy on their side. In New Jersey, you saw how the Republicans were not able to hold the gains they had made in the last 2 years, in the last two major elections in New Jersey. 2021's gubernatorial election and the 2024 presidential election, where Republicans made huge gains with working class voters, especially working class minority voters. Those gains did not hold true. And in New York, obviously, it was never expected that the Republican nominee for mayor was going to do well. But even still, we could see some of the Republican messaging come through in the mayoral election, and it was extremely ineffective. We had people who were talking more about, Zoran Mandami's religion than they were talking about the actual policies that Zoran was advocating for, and not understanding why someone like Zoran would actually be appealing to a certain demographic of voter. There are certain precincts in New York that voted for Donald Trump by 2-to-1 margins that are now voting for Zoran Mandani. And not all of that can just be attributed towards, demographic trends from one way or another. Some of that is about ideology. Some of that is about people wanting to vote for a dynamic candidate like that. And Republicans haven't been able to see that. They were trapped in 2002 throughout the entire New York City mayoral election. And that's something you just can't be doing in the year 2025. So I think that each of these elections demonstrate different problems that the Republican Party have, and it has to fix. We cannot continue going back to the same playbook of getting the same voters out and the same messaging and expecting to uphold the same gains that we just made in the exact same areas. It doesn't work. Unless you can understand why people voted for you in the first place, you're not going to be able to keep getting them to vote for you over and over and over again.
Yep. Well, let me give you guys a handful of topics here and just grab whichever one you want. But there's some takeaways. You mentioned Mamdani. I mean, there's a lot to learn from his win, but just like we saw with Brandon Johnson, there will likely be a lot of opportunities for Republicans to show how those far left policies do not work. And so there is an opportunity here for Republicans. You need to learn, Chris is right, learn from how he won, learn from how Brandon Johnson won. But here's one positive. This should create opportunities for contrast to show the failures of the far left progressive agenda. So there is something good there. There's a new face of the left's extremism. My buddy Josh Emmerich posted on social media. But there's a couple other takeaways. We talked about this. Chris said the enthusiasm gap. There was a poll taken, and Democrats are 63% extremely motivated to vote. Republicans are 50% extremely motivated to vote right now. That's huge. That's a 13% gap on motivation. That's a problem. I mentioned affordability. In exit polls after these elections, the voters brought up these issues: cost of living, groceries, housing, utilities, They brought those up well ahead of the economy, immigration, or anything else. It is cost of living, it's affordability that is dominating our politics right now. And I brought up how people feel about Trump's promises on the economy. Listen, 63% in these exit polls said that the Trump administration has fallen short on the economy and inflation. They feel worse off financially. That's the exit polls. I'm not making this up. All right, that's how people feel right now, and people vote based on how they feel. What isn't leading to this? It's not the shutdown. In those same exit polls, people asked what was the reason for their vote, and was it the shutdown? And actually, voters blame both parties for the shutdown. It was even. I'm not saying the shutdown's a good thing. As a matter of fact, I know Republicans want the shutdown to end now. But Trump coming out saying that the losses were all because of the shutdown is not borne out by the data. Yes, the shutdown does need to end because it's hurting real people. But the election losses on Tuesday were not because of the shutdown. They're because of the economy. And they're because of the cost of living and affordability. That's why people voted overwhelmingly Democrat. We got to learn the right lessons if we're going to make sure we make the changes we need to make in order to win.
Well, and another thing the administration was saying, and the folks at the powers that be were saying, well, we didn't have very good candidates. We didn't have very good candidates. Well, here again, that's part of our problem too. We've got to find the right candidate for these positions to get it out there and go. And, it's one of those things, as he won that mayor's race in New York City, he's made a lot of promises here. How is he going to come through with all the promises? If we can't come through and grab some of the moderates from the other side and vote Republican, we're going to be in trouble because, John, the numbers that you gave there about how his turnout was, and that's astounding. I don't know how we're going to right that ship. We've got to find some folks that are fired up, energized, and excited about moving this plane forward. If not, we're in trouble in November. And they said economy, they keep pushing back. Well, the economy's going to improve, first quarter, second quarter of 2026. Now they're saying it's going to improve second quarter, third quarter, 2026. Then we're getting into the November election, and we could be in major, major trouble.
Yeah, and listen, people make up their minds in these elections a lot earlier than they used to. If it takes until September for the economy to turn around, the elections will basically be over by then. So, something's got to change here. And you bring up, I mentioned it earlier, the infighting. That's part of our problem too. Is the infighting in our party. Democrats, when they get to the general election, they unify. You saw Mickey Sherrill in New Jersey. You saw Abigail Spanberger in Virginia. They focused on uniting moderates and progressives. Meanwhile, we're still in our party doing the same purity tests about if you're not conservative, you're not allowed in our party. And listen, I get why that makes you feel good, and it's rah-rah, and it gets lots of likes on social media, but it doesn't win elections, and we just saw it yet again on Tuesday.
I have to respectfully disagree with the state representative on candidate quality when it comes to New Jersey. Republican Jack Ciattarelli came within 3 points of flipping that governorship election in 21. Nobody expected it to be that close. And he had the full support of President Trump, even before the primary. He won the primary overwhelmingly. I agree concerning New York City. It's a given. Definitely the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Winsome Earl Sears. She had a very terrible campaign from the get-go. It was supposed to get better with the Attorney General candidate putting his foot in his mouth, and then he goes on and wins that election and flips the Attorney General's race. So in Virginia, I agree, candidate quality at the governor's level. New Jersey, candidate quality was not the issue. The one thing that the two ladies had who won, both are former military, both worked at the CIA, both had served in Congress, and they had a better, well-rounded resume, including military service, which that might be something that we learn as far as when primary voters go in March to choose nominees. How do you increase?
But John, isn't that the point? Even if you think that our candidates aren't maybe as bad as Jason had mentioned, and that's I appreciate the debate on that. The reality is the Democrats went out and got candidates that were likable both to their base and to everyday people. You talk about Democrats running former members of the military. Like a decade ago, that would have been unheard of. And now you've got Democrats, service members who are running as Democrats that would have not ever been seen not that long ago. And so you've got the Democratic Party that is actively working to recruit candidates that can appeal to a broad array of voters. Meanwhile, as we talk about Republican candidates next, we struggle with that as Republicans. And so that is a problem for us. And it's one we're going to continue to hamper us at the ballot box if we don't solve that. Let me get into Illinois. That's our third big topic of the week. So let's get into it. This is the one that's got me the most cranky, and I am going to be pretty negative here because, frankly, there's no defending our party with some of this. But in an effort to try to not be too negative, let's take this section by section. We're going to talk about the candidates who filed or didn't file in the various sort of sections of races. So I'll talk federal, I'll talk statewide, we'll talk Senate, we'll talk House, and then we'll get into like some of the key races after the segment. This is just about who filed and who didn't. So let's do that. Let me just give the update for those who may not know. In the U.S. Senate race, you had 8 Republicans who filed. The only serious candidate there is Don Tracy. I know he's our client. I have to make that clear. But that's not just us saying it. You've got 7 other candidates, some of which are nice people, but nobody has proven they can actually run a serious race, including one of the candidates who had people flown in from out of state and paid them money to just get her on the ballot. We'll talk about her more in the future if she ever actually announces that she's running. But she dropped a bunch of money just to try to make it on the ballot, and nobody from Illinois even passed her petitions, but she's running for U.S. Senate. Anyways, on the governor's side, we've got Bailey, Dabrowski, Mendrick, and Heidner. 3 other candidates, Moore, Solomon, and Severino, have filed as well, but some of those supposedly are potentially going to be knocked off the ballot. So really, you've got Bailey, Dabrowski, Mendrick, and Heidner in that race. For comptroller, we've got Brian Drew, the only candidate, and he's a really good one, so at least good news there. Secretary of State, you've got Walter, Chris, how do I say his last name?
Adamczyk.
Thank you, Adamczyk and Diane Harris. For AG, Andy Williams and Joanne Guillemette, I don't know. And then no Republicans for treasurer, which is among many things that have honked me off. All right, what do you guys got? Just on the statewide, those are the candidates.
Right?
What's that?
Bob Fioretti for AG. We missed that one.
Yeah, I missed that one. I missed when I pulled this up, I only had the 2, but yeah, you're probably right. All right, so what do we got? What are your thoughts on just the statewide, those who did or didn't file?
I'm just gonna make one quick obvious thing. Instead of going after a comptroller, Chris, maybe we should have put you in the treasurer there and kind of gone that direction right off the bat there.
Listen, I was committed to the comptroller's race. It was Michael Butler who was leading the crusade for the treasurer's race. So he was responsible for holding the Republican Party hostage on that race. He did not step up.
I don't think I'm capable of holding them hostage. If I said I was doing it, they all would have got behind me.
And everyone got behind me too, Butler. So again, you can hold anybody
Chris,
can hold the party hostage.
Michael's stealing my point, right? That nobody actually wanted Chris, but they might have actually wanted Michael. I mean, let's be real. I mean, I'm going to talk about this when we're done going through each of the sections, but I'm having no candidate for treasurer. Can we all agree is not acceptable? I mean, I know I don't want to put Jason in a bad spot. Michael, I know you're a county chairman for the Republican Party. So like, I'm not looking to put anybody in a bad spot here, but this is not okay. I mean, not only did it take us forever to even find candidates for a lot of these races, the fact that we have for the first time in 90 plus years, there's a uncontested statewide race here because Republicans couldn't find a candidate for a treasurer. The candidates for AG are mostly unserious. The candidates for Secretary of State, are mostly unserious. I mean, thank God we've got Brian Drew. We've got a serious candidate for comptroller. We've got kind of serious candidates for governor. We've got one serious candidate for Senate, but like as a showing as a party, this is not okay.
Well, it's a testament, especially to the fact that the treasurer's race was actually the closest race in 2022 with Tom Demmer. And
we've talked about Ferrix underperforms. Like this, if you're going to look at any of the 3, AG, Secretary of State, or Treasurer, you should have started at Treasurer because that's the most likely of the 3 that you could have come close.
Right, and somebody said it, and I can't give them credit because my brain is completely fried. I don't remember who they were, but somebody was talking about like the absolute like discrepancy in quality of campaign just on paper from 2022 to 2026 because like we had Tom Demmer, who is a state representative who's running for state treasurer. You had Dan Brady, who was running for Secretary of State, state representative, huge name. John Millhiser was a U.S. attorney. He was running for Secretary of State. You know, that's a pretty big deal. You know, you had the mayor of the second largest city in the state running for governor. Yeah, Urban ran a crap campaign, but he was still like, we're talking on paper here. So like we have all these big people coming out. And then this year it's like, well, you got the guy you nominated last time for governor. And, you know, you got old Bob Fioretti getting his name out there for AG. You know,
he's the Jim Oberweis of this decade, I guess.
Right. So it's like, to complete this, and it reflects the seriousness of the party at a statewide level, of course. You know, it's one of those things where serious people are going to step up if, like, they see that there is an infrastructure there to support them, and there's not. And there's also not people from the party, unfortunately, who are going around and talking to people. It's like, hey, I think you'd be a good candidate for this. I think you'd be a great candidate for that. And unfortunately, we weren't even able to get a warm body on the ballot for state treasurer.
Well, Chris, and I shared this on Finkston's radio show, and one of these days I'll share all the details of what I dealt with when I was trying to recruit candidates. But I can tell you from firsthand knowledge that when I called, because I made, I don't know, I have it tracked somewhere, 70, 80 different calls to potential candidates. And for many people who were obvious, people like you, I figured this is the first person somebody would call, but I'll give them a shot anyways. Every time I heard, you're the first person to call me. Why am I calling? Why isn't it party chairs, central committee members, caucus leaders, big donors? Somebody. Like, I'm not in any party positions, and yet I was the first person to call them to see if they'd be willing to run. Like, it's been frustrating for months. You look at the governor's race, it took how long to finally get some of these candidates in this race? Like, it's just, if this is our Republican Party, I was going to rant later, but I'll just do it now. I said it on the radio show, I'll say it now. Like, this is not the sign of a serious party. Like, it reminds me of Succession, if anybody watched that show, where Logan says to his kids, you are not serious people. I mean, that's how I feel about our party right now. I'm just going to say it. I don't care if people are unhappy about me saying it out loud, but the Illinois Republican Party, that's how I feel. It's just not a serious party. We are not a serious entity in this state. And frankly, I don't know that we deserve the reins of power. We don't. If you can't put together a slate of candidates, if you can't recruit people to run for office, if you can't stop fighting each other enough to actually run some serious candidates who could actually lead, like, listen, when you get the reins of government, that's a big deal. This isn't some weekend warrior project. It isn't just something you do fun in your, or you just post to social media. So, hey, I'll be governor now. Like, this is a real thing. You have the lives of everyday people that you are impacting on a daily basis when you're elected. That's a big deal. And if you can't take that seriously, then you know what? Just get the hell out of the game, get the hell out of the way. Because honestly, right now, I cannot point to the Illinois Republican Party and say that we deserve a position of leadership. We just don't. I'm sorry.
No, Collin, I very agree, especially with the two open statewide positions. We have a solid candidate for comptroller, but we also had an open U.S. Senate seat for the first time in 30 years for this seat. And the only serious candidate is Don Tracy, former party chair, well into his 70s. He's the best we came up with. It's like you said, and obviously John, with all the attention of Washington.
Don is okay with me sharing this. Like, Don spent months encouraging other people to do it. Like, he did it because nobody else would step up. Now he's got a great resume for it, but Don knows what you know, which is, I think he's 75. Like, he wanted to help somebody younger take that spot, but nobody would step up. Nobody had the guts to say, as you said, with all this attention in DC, no one would step up for that. And so Don said, fine, we need a serious candidate. I guess I'll do it. But he was of the same mind you are, John, that he was waiting for somebody to step up.
I hear it. Like I said, and certainly, he's formally kicking off his campaign up here in Algonquin on Wednesday, and it's a matter of, okay, well, is best we have, at least let's see what we can expose and bring what level of additional common Midwestern common sense and can we bring to DC. And yes, Don Tracy, no one else stepped up, and you're right, Don Tracy is likely the person. The others are all minor candidates or tier 4, tier 5 candidates, and they're not going to get past the primary.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, again, I don't want to put, if Jason and Michael, you don't want to touch what I just said because it's, I get it's uncomfortable for you, but I think we're understandably frustrated.
Well, I would just say, even on the local level, as chairman in St. Clair, I had a lot of conversations with people about a variety of offices, even at the local level. And, you just keep working the list until finally you get, a candidate that that's good quality that people can be satisfied with. And I think it was, at least at the local level, I was hearing, stories on the Democratic side where they were having trouble finding, we got an open seat for county board. We can't find a candidate. We got an open seat for this. What are we going to do? They were getting turned down a lot as well. So I think, part of it is because it's, we're Republicans and we're in the state of Illinois, and, obviously people aren't, high on us or our chances of accomplishing anything. But also I think, with the current environment, is very difficult to get somebody to agree to, I'm going to put my name on the ballot and put myself out there because of what you are going to face. It's just a sad state of affairs. We need good people to run for office and give it everything they have and go in understanding that, you're going to take some arrows. and there's going to be nasty articles written about you, and there's going to be mail sent about you, and there's going to be people that, the Facebook warriors, but you got to power through that because, we need to get the state moving in a different direction. Even if it's just a county board seat, all of that adds up to, better lives for Illinoisans.
Well, and I think that's a lot of the problem there, Michael. And you took the words out of my mouth when you said the infighting that's taking place right now in this Republican Party. I think it gets people extremely concerned and nervous about and putting themselves out there. And if you look and see who is up for election this year, we don't have a whole lot of midterm senators. There's a lot of us that are running on this ballot here in the jobs that we currently hold, and it's got to take somebody to go above and beyond and decide enough is enough. We're going to throw my name out there. It's just this infighting that's taking place in the Republican Party, I think, has really turned a lot of people off from taking that leap and moving one step forward. Sure.
And my thing is, I always like to make this disclaimer because when at least when I talk about the Illinois Republican Party, I'm not talking about, just Kathy Salvi or just the executive director or just that staff. Well, they're thankless jobs that nobody in the world could be successful. Okay. Like, nobody wants those jobs. When you talk about the Illinois Republican Party, you're talking about the entire apparatus. You're talking about it as a concept. And from top to bottom, from precinct committeemen all the way up to the elected officials, there is something seriously wrong with the Illinois Republican Party, wherein they are not focused on winning. They aren't even focused on trying for whatever reason. And it's weird because as someone who came into the Republican Party in Illinois as a foreigner and had to hear over and over and over again how there is some type of divine entity at play here that is going to propel the Republican Party to victory because the people are waking up or something, even with that mentality in the hearts and minds of so many activists and precinct committeemen and even candidates, it still struggles to find even tier 3 people to step up and run for some of these offices. And that's what I think is the most upsetting here. We talked about how the Democratic Party is a machine. But the reality of the situation is that the Republican Party in the state used to be a machine. There used to be people up until even a short time ago who would sit down in their rooms and they would determine who they thought should be the nominee for various offices, be it Congress or a statewide position or down to state representative and county positions. There were those people who, whether or not they had real authority or just perceived authority, would make those types of decisions. And we're at the point where the Republican Party does not even possess those people, be it at a micro level locally or a macro level statewide. There is nobody sitting down and making decisions and making moves to move the Republican Party in a certain direction. And it's such a reactive, it's so reactive instead of proactive, and it's so frustrating as a political operative, as a political expert, as Collin likes to call me. It's so frustrating to view that from the outside looking in when the Democrats don't have their crap together. They don't like each other. They go through the same problems that the Illinois Republican Party does in terms of their infighting, and the Republican Party can't seem to take advantage of that year after year after year.
Well, and listen, we've talked about it. The infighting is the problem. I mean, at least it's a part of the problem. We'll talk about this in a future episode. I'm still gathering details, but there was a significant effort put forward to challenge county and township and even precinct committeemen because of some individuals who want to take control of the state party. And again, I'm still gathering details, but I'm hearing lots of concerning signs about this. Clearly, a ton of effort went into that. How come that effort didn't go into recruiting candidates to run for office, actually Republican candidates to run for office? You've got in McHenry County. Let's talk about it. John, I know you're out there.
Yep.
This has gotten some play recently because it should have. In McHenry County, you look at the precinct committeeman slots. Democrats filled 89 slots with 90 candidates. Republicans filled only 67. And as of just before the last day of filing, it was almost 2-1 Democrat. You've got people out there who spend all their time ripping apart the Republican Party. This Garrettson Bean, if I'm saying her name right, she spends all her time. She's a DeVore acolyte. She spends all of her time on Facebook ripping apart other Republicans, yet she's in charge of recruiting committeemen in McHenry County. And here we go in what used to be deep red McHenry County. They had 2-1 Democrat to Republican for precinct committeemen until the last day county. Now they have what, 4-3 in what's supposed to be a red county. We've talked about it, how that county's been trending more and more and more away from us. It was R13 in 2016, then R8, R9, then R4. Ronner won it by 10. Bailey only won it by 1.5. Trump only won it by 5. Like, that county is trending against us, and now they have a majority. They're beating us when it comes to precinct committee people.
Well, they're not only beating us on precinct committeemen, they're also beating when it comes to just simple tax policy. The supermajority Republican McHenry County Board is looking to raise property taxes by 13% using the look back provision of state law. And right now, only 4 conservatives, Republicans on that board took a stand to say, wait, we need to stop this. Now, they passed it anyway, now for 30-day review, but they come up for a vote on November 18th. So it's not just that the precinct committee person, it's a matter of, are these Republicans acting like Republicans and actually implementing the policy platform at the local level of more business friendly, less taxes. And that's where, I mean, remember, McHenry County approved a sales tax increase last year in the primary. And, you know, that stemmed from something that when I appeared unexpectedly on Smoke-Filled Room in Homer Glen, I took that to the county board and it was embraced. And then McHenry County Republicans and Democrats and independents went and passed only by 5 points, but they passed it. First time a county has shifted mental health funding from the property tax to the sales tax. That should be a common sense win. And yet now it's being squandered because the current McHenry County administration cannot control the spending. And basically, you're looking at a huge tax increase that likely will pass based on the votes. Only 4 board members stood up by name to try to stop this. And you wonder why Republicans don't have enthusiasm.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is why you can see the Democratic Party put out a press release. And I'm going to read it because, frankly, Republicans, you deserve to have to sit and listen to this. Our inability to be a serious party allows the Democratic Party to say this with a straight face, and they're frankly right. The end of petition filing proved what Illinois Democrats and voters already knew. The Illinois Republican Party are simply unserious about doing their jobs. They can't recruit candidates, they can't organize, and they certainly can't raise money. If they can't meet the lowest bar of running for office, how can voters trust them to govern or fight for working families? Our inability to do the basics lets them put out a press release like that, and we've just got to sit there and take it because they're not, frankly, wrong. I'm going to play the clip. Here we go. I'm probably going to have this on speed dial moving forward, but here you go.
I love you, but you are not serious people.
There you go. That's Logan from Succession. I mean, that's where we are. I love you. I love you, Republicans. I've been part of this party for 20 years. I'm questioning it. I'm not going to lie. But right now in this state, we are not serious people, and we got to get our shit together because we got 1 year, or we're going to be even further in the super minority. We're going to even. How is that possible? People like to point to, oh, look, Trump barely lost to Illinois, and yet we're in the super minority in Springfield. Guess what? Yeah, it's a little bit because of gerrymandering, and it's a lot of it because we are not a serious political party, and it's time to grow up.
And look at April 1st. You cannot blame gerrymandered maps on April 1st.
Yeah, and we got demolished on April 1st. Yep. All right, so we've got through all of that. Let's go through the rest of the races. I gave my rant earlier than I expected, but whatever. So let's go through the rest of the races. We'll do it quickly since we've already spent a lot of time here. Talk about the federal races. I'll just focus on, for the federal and the legislative races, I'm not going to do all of them. I'm just going to do the ones that are on the radar. So aisle 6 against Sean Casten, we've got Nikki Conforti and Skylar Dunsing. For aisle 8, you had 8 Democrats file in that open seat. For the Republican side, Jennifer Davis, Mark Rice, Kevin Aki, or I may be saying that wrong, and then Herbert Hebeen. Again, they're not serious candidates, so whatever. Aisle 11, Bill Foster, you've got Michael Pierce, Jeff Walter, Tadora Brown, and Charlie Kim. Aisle 13 against Budzinski, you've got Jeff Wilson and Joshua Lloyd. Aisle 14 against Underwood, we have yet again Jim Martyr putting Jim Oberweis to shame, and Gary Vician. Aisle 17, you've got Julie Bickelhaupt and Dylan Vansel. So for the federal races that are on the radar, those are the candidates. Any quick thoughts from anybody on any of those races?
I thought it was weird.
I know you've got thoughts on aisle 8.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just saying, I thought it was weird. I've noticed a pattern where there's like a lot of candidates who are filing from outside of their district. Like, I know you can run for any congressional district as long as you live in the state. Like, that's fine. But like, Herb Habein lives in Mount Green when he's running for the 8th congressional district. That caught me by surprise. I know Herb, and I was like, why is Herb running for Congress in the 8th? That doesn't make sense. Or like Skylar Dunsing, who's from Shorewood and was, basically really involved in Will County Republican politics. And then all of a sudden he was running for the 6th congressional district. It was like, why? Like, all your political capital's over here and you're running for Congress over here. Some things don't like this don't make sense to me. I understand it's legal, whatever. Everybody has like, very esoteric residency in the state if you're a political operator. We all know these things. I know damn well Butler doesn't live in O'Fallon, but that doesn't matter. Okay.
What the heck? I need to.
But it is a trend. I've definitely seen the same thing, Chris. And again, it's, shows a little bit of unseriousness. But John, I know you want to talk about aisle 8. Go ahead.
Yes, definitely aisle 8. That is my home district. Right now, Jennifer Davis is, by far a candidate quality improvement over the 2024 nominee, and he's running again, Mark Rice. Right now, and the other two are very last minute considered minor. We'll see if they stay on the ballot. And all in all, I mean, they're having, everything that I've seen of the Davis campaign, they put together the right pieces, merging establishment and grassroots, because it was both grassroots and establishments that wanted a change in the nominee going into 2026. Just some things that came up in 2024, basically the bad underperforming, even with President Trump on the ballot. And that's why the candidate quality upgrade was made with Jennifer Davis running. So look for a very, very vigorous primary. And then when it comes to the Democrats, they brought Melissa Bean out of retirement after 15 years. And then because you got a bunch of progressives running on the Democratic side. I mean, even one of them had Walsh, Joe Walsh.
Yeah, we talked about that last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, denied. So, and he's the first one that's starting to say you're going to hear more of this because of immigration and President Trump. Abolish ICE. So it should be a Davis versus Bean general, which would be a good, thorough vetting of the issues. But we'll see what the Democrats do. But right now, the Republicans, we'll see what we'll do the right thing. I hope we do the right thing and nominate Davis, but that's we'll see what the other candidates do. They have to run a campaign. I
always say in this podcast, we encourage you to share your thoughts. If you've got a favorite, go for it. John just did. We don't take sides of the podcast, but we let anybody who's on here do if they'd like to. So thanks for sharing your thoughts, John. Anyone else have thoughts on the federal races before I go to the state Senate?
Just one other thing. Illinois 11. You got 4 candidates. 2 are really serious. You have basically it's Army versus Navy. Lieutenant Colonel retired Michael Pierce of the Army versus Master Chief Petty Officer retired and Elburn Mayor Jeff Walsher. Those are the top 2 candidates in that race. And will the other 2 be competitive? That remains to be seen. One of them's under indictment. So that remains to be seen if they'll be competitive.
Yeah, when we talk about not being a serious party, you got candidates like Tedora Brown, who's running in that 11th, as you mentioned, who is awaiting a trial in a federal fraud case alleging she misused COVID-19 relief funds. I'm guessing that's PPP. So yeah, Russell Lissa, my friend for the Daily Herald, unearthed that and put that out there. So yeah, more signs of our unserious Republican Party. So thanks, John. Thanks for bringing that up.
Mm-hmm. She also doesn't live in the district, by the way. Another person who's not running in the district they live in.
Yeah. All right, let me go through quickly the Senate races. So 18, which is currently Cunningham, but he's stepping down. You've got Fran Hurley is going to be the Democrat. Republicans are running Christine McGovern, who filed. In Seth Lewis's district, he'll be facing Ben McAdams, it looks like. Darby Hill's Senate District 26, she'll be facing Nabila Saeed. 33rd, which was Don DeWitt, you've got 2 Democrats who have filed, and then you've got Jessica Brueggemans, Danielle Penman, and Cody Holt who filed. So it was, I think, 4 or 5. Now it's down to 3 in the 33rd on the Republican side. And 36 against Halpin, you've got Brad Beekman and Patrick Harlan. Senate District 41, John Curran. He did not pull an opponent, so we talked about that may be possible last week. We can talk about that here. 48 against Doris Turner, you got Frank Lesko, who's filed on the Republican side. Erica Harris, her 56th district. You've got Marcia Geldert Murphy and Kevin Hall on the Democratic side who filed. Any of those Senate races you guys want to talk about? And I'll just bring up 41. I mean, we talked about it last week. Clearly, the Senate Republicans had a strategy here to try to avoid an opponent and sort of play, I don't know, old school favorite, like a friendly. I don't know. I mean, the cordial nature of the Senate is it's common, and it seems like they sort of played that, and it worked. They got no opponent for Curran. That's going to save Senate Republicans millions of dollars and a lot of hassle. So kudos to the Senate Republicans on that. The concern from some, I mean, I know some people posted on social media that a deal was cut, and I guaranteed it was not that nefarious. John Curran would never do that. That said, I am concerned a little bit that the only reason why Republicans feel happy about this is because, look, Democrats can't slate, so we're free and clear. Democrats have shown that overnight they will change the election rules if it benefits them. And so I'm concerned that they will hold us over the Republicans' heads all next session, because going to the last day of session, they could just change the rules, allow slating, go slate somebody against Curran. And what makes me nervous is, will that hold that over Curran and Republican leadership in the Senate through all of next caucus? Because I don't think they can have a deep breath until they know that the Democrats haven't changed the rules again to allow slating. Because as we'll talk about soon, that district is one of the toughest districts to hold. The numbers there are just as bad as they are in Darby Hills, Senate District 26. So it's a huge, huge gain for Republicans to not have a Democrat in that seat. I just worry Harman has shown he's skeevy enough to be like, well, you know what? Go with me or I'll go slate somebody against you. And I hope to see Senate Republicans start to show a little bit more of a fight now that we're past filing season. But there's a chance they won't, because they could still be screwed in the next session.
Hi. Of those races, the 33rd, I mean, we already know about the 26th. That's Darby Hills, Nabila Sayed. That matchup is set. But you have a contested primary. The Republicans, of the three, only one, Cody Holt, has held elective office. He's a former school board member for Elgin U46. He clearly has the grassroots conservative support based on his record. The establishment support is Jessica Brueggelmann. She's from unincorporated Geneva. And it's your classic establishment versus the grassroots showdown for the primary. We're Danielle Penman. She's out of St. Charles. Unknown where her base is. If it's a three-way race with two women with one man, it will favor Cody. But then again, Mr. Holt, and I'm definitely neutral in that race at this point. I do live in that district. Holt has not shown he can raise money. Mm-hmm. And that is a key requisite. So those grassroots supporters who are all backing him, they need to start writing checks, and definitely at a level that it can be itemized so we can see who's supporting him. And that's going to be his challenge. Brueggelmann, for her credit, has shown she can raise a little money. But the Democrat, the one you got to watch out for, of the two Democrats, only one is backed by the establishment. That's Michelle Clark. Yep. She's from my hometown here in Algonquin. She just lives within a mile of me here in Kane County. And she is working with the local school district D300 food pantry as a director. And she also is a Dundee Township Boys and Girls Club COO during the pandemic. She is going to be tough. This will be a tier one race, because I do believe the Democrats think they can flip the seat. And Clark is running on the platform of lowering property taxes and good old centrist policies. So she's
typical Democrat talking points in Illinois. I'm going to lower your taxes, and then I'm going to go vote to raise them.
Exactly. So, and of course,
all right.
Property tax.
Well, let me get us to the House races. Thank you for your thoughts, John. Let me just quickly go through these House races just because we're running out of time. Okay. I'll do these ones faster here. 42, which is open now. Tara Costa Howard left it. Republicans don't have much of a chance on paper, but Stephanie Tressel has filed. We'll see if she's facing De La Rosa or LaPlante. They've got a primary on the Democratic side against Marty Deuter in 45. Republicans have Gina Perilli. In 47, Amy Grant has stepped back. That's going to be a real tough one to hold. Democrats are really excited about Erica Bray Parker. Republicans seem pretty excited about Robert Vrankovich, so we'll see how that race goes. 51 is now open. It was Nabila Saeed, so Jenny Levin is running. On the Democratic side, you've got a Republican primary between Tossie Uferdike and Lori Smith. 52 is Marty McLaughlin. We'll see who comes out of the Democratic primary between Erin Chan-Ding and Maria Peterson. 55 was Marty Moreland. We'll talk about that in a second. Democrat there is Justin Cochran. The Republican is Joseph Johnson. 61 against Joyce Mason. You've got a Republican there, Tina Maria Durant. Reich in 63 has a Democratic opponent in Brian Mayers. Ugasti in 65 has a Dem opponent in Ricky Rivard. Suzanne Ness is going to be having a rematch against Lori Parman. Word was that Republicans were trying to find someone there. Looks like, other than Lori, looks like they didn't succeed. Against Vela in 68, Republicans are pretty high in Kathy Easton. We'll see how that plays out. House District 76 against Amy Murray-Briel is one of our best pickup opportunities this year. Liz Bishop is giving it another go, as is Crystal Lofgren. So they're going to have a rematch of their primary from last time. We have a Republican primary in 89. Tony McCombie is being challenged by Victoria Honorado. 91 against Sharon Chung, Republicans failed to find a candidate. That may come back to bite us, as Finkston and some others have said. 94, another Republican primary. Noreen Hammond is facing Joshua Higgins and Bailey Templeton. Harry Benton's going to have a rematch with Gabby Shanahan in 97. Brandon Schweizer is pretty happy because in 104, his Democratic opponent, Mary Catherine Robertson, is way more liberal than the opponent he faced last time. That should help him in 104. 105, Dennis Tipsworth has stepped away, so Tim Rusman on the Republican side is looking to take his place. Charlie Meyer in 109 has a primary challenge from Zachary Meyer. 102 or 112, Katie Stewart, she has a primary. Assuming she makes it through that, she'll face Jimmy Ford in the general. Kevin Schmidt will not be facing LaToya for the third time. She'll be facing George McClellan. In 116, Dave Severin has a primary challenge from Angela Evans. And finally, 118 was Paul Jacobs. He's now going to be in the Senate. And so you've got a number of Republicans who filed. Chip Merkel, Joe DuBose, Scott Duty, Harold Visser, Dayton Lloyd. I probably got most of those names right. Anybody have any quick thoughts on those House races? Anyone you want to highlight before we finish this topic?
Well, looking forward to 76 again. Hoping Liz and Crystal, when that get through that primary there, how that's going to play out. Amy Merrill Brill she is far progressive, not what that district looked like. I know they've got that sliver that goes up into DeKalb County and helps her out, but hoping Liz and Crystal can make that work and get that flip back around. But you've got I think Severin and that Angela is that a rematch from last time?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So happy to see.
In 76, it's pretty clear that Brill is no Lance Hednock. That has been clear this last year.
Absolutely. And I would have to agree with you when it comes to Brandon's opponent down there, Mary Catherine. She is actually the chief of staff or outside person for Congresswoman Kelly. So I think Brandon's probably going to enjoy this race a little bit more than what he did the last one. But
and you look at during the primary for U.S. Senate, Robin Kelly is right now the most liberal candidate, the most progressive candidate. Some of the things she says on a daily basis, if Schweizer can use that in his race, because his opponent is so closely tied to Robin Kelly, that's only going to help. So yeah, that's going to be a much more favorable race, which it needs to be because we've talked about the underlying numbers in that region have been going really badly for Republicans. So Schweizer's going to be a tough hold, but thank God he's got a much easier opponent this time. All right, let me do this. I know I've got some topics in the agenda that I'm sure you guys prepared for. I'm sorry for that, but if we go through all this, you guys are going to be here until it's dark out. So let's talk about the governor's race because I'm sure you all have thoughts, but we'll skip the legislative discussion because we kind of just already did it. But let's open this up for anybody who has thoughts on the governor's race. Obviously, from the Darren Bailey perspective, we do not have any inside information on their plans for their campaign. The assumption is that they will continue. I don't think you'd see Aaron Del Mar out there smiling so much if he knew they weren't going to continue. So the assumption is that they will continue in this race. Obviously, you've got four candidates in this race. We're going to give it a go with Dabrowski, Bailey, Mendrick, and Heidner. When it comes to fundraising, we still have concerns about Dabrowski. He did file 5K and A1s yesterday, Wednesday, so that's good. We'd like to see a lot more because it's only been 8K since the Q3 report. Bailey had 42 prior to suspending his campaign, so obviously we can't hold the fact that he doesn't have any since then against him, but when he does start again, we definitely want to see that fundraising pick up because that's our concern. Mendrick's only raised 4.5K since Q3, and Heidner, we got to see. He put in over $1 million before announcing, but we got to see what he's going to do after announcing. Is he going to raise money? It's going to be an interesting dynamic. So you guys have any thoughts on the gov race?
So I want to eat crow real quick. I did not think there was a snowball's chance in hell that Rick Heidner was going to make this ballot. 13 days before petitions are due, and you're going to announce you're running for governor. I thought that was ridiculous. I had the opportunity to take a glance at Rick Heidner's packet. It's sloppy. Don't get me wrong.
It's messy as hell.
It is messy, but it's also probably the most signatures anybody else statewide has gotten. Now, he paid for these things. You can tell he paid for these things, okay? But they got signatures. So I'm going to give respect to the shakedown operation that's happening over at Team Heidner. I don't care how much money Brett Corrigan was taking off the top of these signatures. They got the signatures. Chris was wrong. Now, will they stay on the ballot? Is somebody going to sit there and burn their, corneas out by looking at those signatures for the next few days and challenge him.
I'm sure I'm sure it's going to be like the highest strike rate if there was an objection, but even still, with what 17,000 signatures, you got to strike more than three out of four to get him off the ballot. It's just probably not going to be possible.
Yeah, but I'm sure the interns over at Team Dabrowski are just like pulling what's left of their hair out right now, trying to get this guy kicked off the ballot. Or Dan Proft thinks that Rick Heidner somehow helps them. Possible, the way that Dabrowski's campaign has ran so far. I wouldn't be surprised if they think this actually helps them. To be determined. But Rick Heidner, you're probably not watching this. You have no idea who I am, probably. But if this gets back to you, good job, I guess.
I mean, there's been some developments in the race. There's been, for those who didn't see, you see a number of text messages now going out from those Prof. Tim Pony papers. I don't know what to call them, but the whole purpose of those is to be able to push your narrative. And it looks like not only are they now going to be putting in pro-Dabrowski articles, but also negative Heidner articles, negative articles of some of the other candidates, but they're also now texting it out to voters. So this is, if you want to know why Dabrowski feels confident, part of it is that network and that reach that those Proft/Timponi papers have is significant. And now not only is it going to be social media, apparently now they're going to be texting it to voters. In the past, they've mailed stuff to voters, like paper copies of this. And so if there is a potential advantage that Dabrowski has in the race, it's going to be that. And they're starting to lean into that more and more. You saw a lot more this week out of that. So expect to see even more of that all the way through March 17th. It's going to help the Dabrowski campaign. Will it be enough? I mean, they'll have to do certainly a lot more, but that is something we want you guys to know about as our audience, that did, it seems like, kick off at a much higher degree over the last week.
Obviously, prayers to the Bailey family, as many have said here for the last 2 weeks. It's unimaginable what that family is going through right now, and it's just unbelievable. And it's truly made a slippery slope for all of these candidates on what's the proper way to handle this and work through this process. So it's something, I think everybody's handling it as well as they can do right now. But it's going to get to a point here to where a decision's going to have to be made. We're going to have to know what happens, and we've got to get educated by these candidates for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so on the radio this week, I talked about that, and I was asked, what is Bailey going to do? And I don't want to get too much into conjecture. I just simply want to make this point that Darren is in an impossible position. I mean, he's a family man. His faith is important to him, whether you like his politics or not. And admittedly, I've not been super favorable towards his politics, but this hits Darren more than it probably hits your average person. It hits Cindy more than it hits your average person. But here's the reality: is they have a sense of duty. And when they look at this field, they don't see serious campaigns being run by some of these other candidates. And so you've put Darren Bailey in this impossible position where he now has to decide, does he do the right thing for his family? And I don't, and maybe not do this race. But then they look and say, who in this field can take on J.B. Pritzker? Now, I don't think Bailey can beat Pritzker, but you look at this field, and so far these candidates are not showing that they're overly serious. And so if you're the Bailey team, why wouldn't you continue? I mean, if you didn't want Darren Bailey in this race, then you should have found a serious candidate well before Dabrowski finally announced. We've covered that over and over, that it's our own fault as a party. If you didn't want Bailey, well, guess what? You should have found somebody back in May or March. The fact that it took so long, that's what got Darren into the race. He said it publicly. He's admitted it. And now again, here's another position, another situation where if another candidate had proven they were for real by now, maybe Darren would say, okay, you know what? I can pass the torch. I can step away. Like, it would be a heck of a lot easier decision for him if one of these other candidates would finally frickin' step up and show they have what it takes to defeat J.B. Pritzker. But right now, Bailey hasn't done it, and I don't mean to speak ill of him in his time of mourning, but the reality is he hasn't yet shown us he can beat Pritzker. But guess what? Neither have any of the others. And so if you don't want Darren Bailey in this race, don't blame Darren. Don't blame his team. Blame yourself, blame these other candidates, because so far none of these people have shown that they're serious. I mean, we're going back to the same conversation that we're not a freaking serious party. None of these candidates have shown that they can give a serious challenge to J.B. Pritzker. And so if you're Darren, you're put in this position of like, maybe you don't want to continue. Maybe you do want to spend time with the family, but who do you pass the torch to? One of these other candidates got to step up. Any other thoughts on the race? There was some controversies about, Jeannie Ives passing Bailey petitions. It was CRO stuff. It's not a big deal, but people had some fun with it. People complaining about J.B. Pritzker saying that Trump and Republicans could F off. That's just Pritzker desperately trying to be relevant in the presidential race. It's not working, but you're going to see it every week. He's going to try another thing and another thing just to desperately be relevant. So the guy who's lecturing us on ratcheting down our rhetoric keeps ratcheting up his, but it's okay because he can do it. Just like it's okay that he's a billionaire because he's one of the good billionaires. It's always okay when JB Pritzker does it, just not any of the rest of us.
Extremely unprofessional, and embarrassing for a governor to say something like that, and to hear the amount of cheers that he received on the words that he said.
Yeah,
just extremely depressing.
It's right up there with the Virginia AG Democrat winning the election after his disgusting texts, even from a couple to 3 years ago.
They were defended by Pritzker.
Yep. Yeah, it was okay because he was a Democrat.
I think that might be apples to oranges, guys. Like the AG.
No, we don't have time for you to defend the Democrats, Chris.
No, I'm about to say that the guy in Virginia was way worse. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, whatever.
Hey, he
Last
only,
thing is, I got
Democrats once. It wasn't a common occurrence. At least that's what Pritzker said.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Everybody makes mistakes. Here's 20 grand.
Everybody says they want their opponents and their children to die. That's okay. Sheesh.
Yeah.
All right. Last thing here. I got to be fair. I gave Dabrowski some negative feedback because he went on a podcast that is hosted by somebody who has actively and proudly supported the Proud Boys on social media. And I said that was a tactical error, and it was. But last week, Aaron Del Mar went on the same podcast, so I've got to be fair, and I've got to give the same comments to the Bailey Del Mar campaign, which is that is going to bite you in the general election. Could we please be smarter? I know I'll get texts on that, but I've got to be fair. It was a mistake when Dabrowski did it. It was a mistake when Del Mar did it. It's just the facts. Be smarter.
If Aaron would have watched that episode, then he maybe would have backed out.
Yeah, I mean, he's unhappy because, he's all sensitive now that he's a candidate. So anytime I sneeze and I don't say something nice about him, I get, he's not even talking to me now, so whatever. But yeah, once these candidates put their names on the ballot, they get all so sensitive. All right, we're going to skip a topic here. We'll save, Chris, can we just talk about Chewy and Moylan during the clowns of the week or OGs and clowns of the week? We'll save that for then.
I'll take the lead on it, but yeah.
We'll save it for then. I want to talk about this, but we don't have time. So I'm just going to tell you guys. Well, here, let's spend a minute on it. Can we? Nah, we don't have time. All right. Well, there was a Politico article where working class voters were surveyed on the Democratic side, or actually on all sides, and they classified Democrats as woke and weak. Let's spend a minute on it. Let's talk about it. I mean, this is interesting, and it's some positives for Republicans for once. Let's talk about it. That Democrats right now, when you look at working class voters, they are not aligning with Democrats. As a matter of fact, Rahm Emanuel even admitted this, where he talks about it's a struggle for middle class families, for working families, and he said this: "As I travel and listen to voters, it's clear to me that the Democratic Party is perceived as weak, woke, and wrong-headed. Voters are focused on everyday challenges from buying a home, healthcare, retirement security, their kids' education. They are laser focused on their family's bottom line. Democrats, let's get back to fixing the basics and fighting for the universal access to the American dream." Rahm's right. I know we've had this discussion before about this debate in the Democratic Party over bathroom issues, and do they talk about it or do they not? The reality is working class voters do not align with the Democratic Party of today. And when you see Mamdani and Brandon Johnson and all the others, this is what we talk about, is that the Democrats are giving us opportunity after opportunity. We keep squandering it, as Chris likes to say, and I'm sad to admit that he's right. But the reality is, when you look at this study in Politico that was published, it's not like working class voters are super happy with the Democratic Party. They are not happy with Democratic positions. And again, I'm trying to do this fast, but if you want to go on Politico, it's called Working Class Voters Thinks Dems Are Woke and Weak. New research finds, if you want to Google it for yourself. Anybody have some semi-quick thoughts on this topic?
I mean, I think that's why you see some of the rhetoric that you hear from J.B. Pritzker, where he's like trying to portray this tough guy image, like, Trump sending in ICE, I'm going to stand in their way, and, dropping the F-bombs. It's an overcorrection to polls like this, where, Democrats even are saying, yeah, this party's weak.
Yeah, okay. Let me read you something from it now that I finally found what I was looking for. Working class voters don't see Democrats as strong or patriotic, while Republicans represent safety and strength for them. These voters can't name what Democrats stand for other than being against Trump, according to the report. The Democratic brand is suffering as working class voters see the party as too focused on social issues and not nearly focused enough on the economic issues that impact everyone every day. That's the key takeaway, and that's what Republicans need to understand, is that that's why we keep saying you should focus on these issues, because working class voters are pulling away. Working families are pulling away from Democrats, but so far, we're not giving them a solid alternative. If we did, you might see some improved election results.
Agreed. And one thing that I would forewarn Republicans, affordability is crucial. Don't just focus on taxes. And I think some of your surveys have edified that as well. You cannot just be focusing on taxes.
100%. It's part of the cost of living equation. But every poll I've taken, it's not gotten higher than fourth. In some districts, it crept up to third, but like it's cost of living as a whole, healthcare, housing, yes, taxes, groceries, gas, utilities. It's all the pain point that our voters are facing right now. All right, we're going to go through this next section pretty quick, like we always do. It's the news you can use. These are the quick hits. So I'm going to give some information you should be aware of as our audience. You should be talking about these things. And if any of our guests, our panel, have quick thoughts on these topics, they're welcome to give them at the end of each one. So number one, Illinois, as we've talked about before, they have lowered their proficiency standards. And so, of course, this week or last week, they came out and said, look how great it is. Our numbers are so much better in Illinois, but they lowered the standards. That's why they're better. And if you ask Tony Sanders, he even had a quote in Capital News, Illinois, where he was asked about, how can you compare? He said, well, you can't really compare, but they would have increased if we kept the same cut scores. I can't prove it, but I can just tell you they would have improved. It's like, okay, buddy, that's correct. But here's the thing, it's going to continue. Chalkbeat had an article or a post about this, that Illinois has now released a new draft proposal to change their school rating system, which would rate more schools in the highest exemplary designation. They would go from 10% to 12% of K-8 schools and 28% of high schools. There's a number of other changes being done here on not using whether or not kids are ready. Eighth graders are on a path to graduate anymore when you're testing whether or not schools meet certain standards, but they do want your feelings. Illinois wants your opinion on this. So there's 3 public sessions you could attend. One today, because this came out yesterday, and they're now already holding the first session today in Huntley, and then tomorrow in Normal, and then a week from now in O'Fallon, and that's it. That's the only chances you have if you've got any thoughts on whether or not Illinois should continue to reduce our standards for students in order to make it look like our kids are being more successful. Listen, I have been one of the biggest proponents of our schools out there as a Republican. So this is not me saying we shouldn't be improving in our schools, but this is me saying let's stop trying to reduce our weaken our tests. Let's try to help our kids improve better. Or perform better. That's what we should be focused on. Let's actually improve instead of just making it look on paper like we improved. Any quick thoughts, or is everybody, I'm sure, agreeing with that?
Yep.
All right, we talk about J.B. Pritzker's incredible economy in the state all the time. Well, here's another sign. An electric equipment maker by the name of Panduit is now shutting their doors as of the end of the year. It's going to lay off 185 employees in DeKalb, and they're going to be moving to the company's based in Tinley Park, and they're going to move their warehouse over to Northwest Indiana instead. They said it's better for their growth. Here we go. Every week there's a new story about some business closing or moving to Indiana or Wisconsin. Listen, when you're losing to Indiana, it's a problem. Let's be real here. Illinois is losing businesses to Indiana, of all places. How can we be okay with that? All right, Chris, I'm sure you'll have a quick thought on this, but nobody's buying Brandon Johnson's thoughts or attempts to make it look like Chicago's fiscal problems are all Trump's fault. He's calling it the Trump deficit, but even the Sun-Times said, yeah, it's a little crazy. They pointed to how unpopular he still is. He's got a 31% approval rating, which is up 5 points. The Tribune called him out hard on this and said, which Trib is no right-leaning paper anymore, and they called him out on this, rightfully saying that these problems have existed for a long time. And just today, on Thursday, Cranes put out there that S&P has lowered Chicago's credit outlook to negative. They're just a few notches above junk status, and now they may just be 1 notch above junk status if Brandon Johnson continues down this path. So there we go. Continued excellent leadership from Brandon Johnson and the far left in Chicago.
See, we laugh at this, and we do, because it's ridiculous. But here's the thing. You just said that Brandon Johnson's approval rating is up 5% from it was like in the last
It's a dead
poll.
cat bounce, man.
Right, no, but still, like, one thing I have to say about Brandon Johnson is ever since like this ICE stuff started, yeah, we all know Brandon Johnson's incompetence, but we don't realize that like people haven't been talking about how incompetent he is as much lately. And I think that Trump and ICE and everything else happening in the city of Chicago was kind of taking away from that. So this is like getting way ahead of myself here, but that's something that if you don't like Brandon Johnson, you might want to keep an eye on. Just all I'm going to say.
Good point. All right, let's go here to the next one. Almost done. Little paid attention to bill that did pass down in Springfield during veto session is going to help out Cook County. So for those who don't live in Cook County, we're all still waiting for our tax bills. They were supposed to come out July 1st. It's November 6th. They're still not out. That's how incompetent Cook County Democrats are who lead this county. And they're freaking out because what they don't want to have happen is that the tax bills come out basically at this point, probably in January at the earliest. But then next year's tax bills start coming out in March, right before primary election date. And so Springfield has thrown them a little bit of a whatever life raft here in letting them and pushing back the deadline now for the first tax bills in 2026. That's how inept they are in Cook County. They can't even mail out the tax bills, and now Springfield had to bail them out because they were worried this might impact their primary elections because they can't even mail tax bills out. Welcome to Cook County. All right, here's one last thing here that we want you guys to be aware of. You've heard this, I'm sure, that if the Obamacare subsidies that were passed during COVID to help people during COVID that were supposed to be temporary, that's what Democrats are fighting for. That's why they're continuing to shut down the government, as they want those subsidies to continue. If those subsidies were allowed to expire, here's what more people need to be aware of. The average Obamacare premium, based on a study done by the Wall Street Journal, would still be $50 per month or cheaper, even if the subsidies expire. Go check that out in the Wall Street Journal. It's called The Truth About Obamacare Costs. More people need to be aware of this because you hear the Democrats' rhetoric, and here's what you've got to know. There's a paragraph in this study that's super important, that when they talk about these massive increases in the Obamacare premiums, they're talking about Americans that are 55 or older with incomes above 400% of the poverty line. That's affluent early retirees. Those are the ones that see those massive increases that we're being told are going to go to poor people and working families. The reality is that if you're a working family, if you're a member, if you're poor or lower income, well, you're still going to be eligible for $50 or less per month for your health care, which I have to imagine a lot of us who are working families who aren't on Obamacare health insurance would kill for a plan that was $50 a month or less. So more people need to be aware of that. What Democrats are doing are pointing to the wealthiest recipients of Obamacare subsidies and saying, look, see, this is how it's going to kill. And those numbers are scary. It makes it look like poor people are going to get screwed. The reality is that's not actually the case. We got to be getting that word out there because nobody is aware of that.
I'll definitely look at that Wall Street Journal report study. It's open enrollment right now. I'm not seeing that small of an increase in the premium. I'm seeing a very significant increase in my premiums and also for my wife. But it's gotta be with reality, and let's just check it out and find out.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, I think, John, I think when Democrats talk about helping people, they're not talking about you. They consider you wealthy. They're talking about people below your economic status. I consider you just like all the rest of us working class, but Democrats don't consider you working class. They think you're rich.
I hear it. I hear it. No worries.
All right, let's go to our final segments because I've already kept our panel on way too long this week. So, OGs and clowns of the week. What do you guys got, Chris? I'm going to let you start just on I know you want to talk about Moylan and Chewy and their handoffs for their seats.
So yes, the first two clowns of the week are Chewy Garcia and Marty Moylan. After weeks, months of Democrats talking about no kings, no kings, no kings, here we are going to do the old switcheroo handoff routine where we're going to file petitions on the first day, and at the last day be like, guys, actually, after some serious discussions with my family and my doctors, I've decided not to run for re-election. Here's my chief of staff. He's just going to fill the seat for me, guys. Like, this is ridiculous, okay? And listen, you know me. I like hardball politics. I respect it. But it's hypocritical at the end of the day when you're going around talking about like how Trump is a threat to democracy, guys. Like, come on. All right. This is ridiculous. And it was so funny. I'm adding a clown of the week here. I'm adding Rich Miller because immediately after this was announced, Rich Miller said, there are some people who feel like Chewy might be doing it this way in order to make sure the district stays in Latino hands. What are you talking about? The district's 70% Latino. Who's looking at the 4th congressional district and thinking, oh yeah, like I'm a white guy. Like Marie Newman's really revving up her engine so she can run for the 4th congressional district now, guys. Come on, this is ridiculous. So,
well, and Chris, I just want to add on to this that everyone's like, listen, Chewy had a great story, and there were some personal things there, some health things, and I do respect that. But here's the deal: Chewy did this with his county board district too. A lot of people forget that. Thanks to Chris Provenzano for that tidbit. This isn't the first time Chewy did this. He did the whole pass off with his county board seat too. So this whole deal of, oh no, it wasn't on purpose, BS. This is the second time the dude has done this.
And also, I'm kicking myself because everybody knew that everybody knows this is happening in a cycle short. This was supposed to happen in last time in 2024, and then Ray Lopez got the bright idea to run for Congress against him, and Chewy's like, oh no, I can't retire, I gotta run for re-election again. And then like everybody in Chicago politics knew that, and then we just kind of all just let it happen this time. We just kind of forgot about it. So that's on me. That's on the entire, Chicago-based political apparatus who saw this coming. I'm going to give credit to Byron Sigcho Lopez, a man who I hate, a man whose politics are completely juxtaposed to mine. I'm going to give him credit. He's talking about running as an independent for this seat, and I don't blame him. He's an independent progressive. He's basically a communist, but you know what? He's an alderman in the city of Chicago. He has his base, and he's rightfully upset that there's not going to be an actual race for this district. That democracy has been taken away from the people of the 4th congressional district. It's egregious in the 55th too. The 55th is at least somewhat tangentially in competitive for Republicans to where you could be like, okay, voters still have a choice there. But like in the 4th, this is a Democratic seat where even Democrats are not going to have a say over who their representative in Congress is.
The party that likes to lecture us about democracy, the same party who yanked Joe Biden out and with no votes put Kamala Harris in there for president, but we're the threats to democracy. This is the same party who's doing this switcheroo. But yeah, it's Republicans who are the threats to democracy. I'll say this to voters in Marty Moylan's district: if you're unhappy about what just happened, which you should be, go give Joe Johnson a look. I don't know him, never talked to him, but he's the Republican candidate in that position. I've looked at his social media. It looks like a decent social media presence. Hopefully he can run a solid campaign there in Moylan's district, because we talked about that Trump's numbers in that district were actually surprising, and maybe Joe Johnson could make it a race of that.
I have one last
What, Jason, what do you want to say?
I was just going to say, Joe should be playing that all the time. The actions that they are taking place right here, that they should be pounding that all the time, talking about, they're not allowing the folks to pick their person. They're picking their person for them. Just run with that. It will work for him.
Yeah. Chris, we don't have a ton of time. Can you close up your thought?
Last comment, because it pissed me off. Dave Weigel from the Washington Post, I think he's still with the Washington Post, said the old Lipinski handoff because Bill Lipinski, dropped out of the race and Dan Lipinski succeeded him. There's a big difference here. Bill dropped out after the primary, and they still had to slate Dan. There still had to be a vote of the party committeemen, of the township and the ward committeemen. There was still a democratic process that took place to choose that replacement on the ballot. This is not democratic whatsoever.
Yeah. Chris, sticking with you, got any thoughts on the Lions mayor using $245,000 from his campaign committee to pay his tax liability?
That doesn't surprise me whatsoever.
I just figured it might. Chris Getty might make it into your clowns of the week. I didn't know.
All I'm going to say is it doesn't surprise me.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyone else have clowns or OGs?
I got to continue the Chuy Garcia clown of the week, along with Delia Ramirez and Michael Quigley and the Chicago media. The whole raid, the so-called raid at Rayito del Sol daycare, has been blown out of proportion. They're saying that the Democrats are saying ICE staked out a school, a daycare center. No, what happened was, according to DHS, there was a chase, and the man and the woman in the car, who guess she worked there, they dodged into a vestibule there at the school, and the ICE agents had to go in there. Now, the law was just passed, I don't know if it's been signed, that prevents ICE agents from going into schools and courtrooms and everything, but I don't think that's been signed yet. But the point is,
John, the same thing happened in Gurnee, by the way, up in Lake.
Well, there are no cities of refuge. if you're being
but
pursued,
what I'm saying is the same thing happened where two undocumented individuals were being chased by ICE, and they ran to a school, or they drove to a school, got out the car. One got stopped in the parking lot, but the other one ran into the school. And so the ICE agents had a choice. Do you leave them in there with kids in the school, or do you complete the process? This is where this asinine, because we can't work together on immigration, we are putting schools and kids and daycares in jeopardy because the adults in the room can't just sit down and solve this.
And Collin, as you say, these clowns are exposed. I mean, Chicago Tribune reporter even puts meet the teacher. Her name was Diana Santillana from Colombia, a Colombian illegal alien. And so now Republicans from the party chair on down have got to talk about this, saying this is how the truth is being distorted. And Pritzker is the number one at this. So that those are all my clowns of that. I'm going to give an OG very quickly to Jenny McGuire. She hosts the Unsafe Space on AM 560. Lately, in the past month, she has been pointing out what's wrong with the Republican Party. She's made some very solid points on the podcast. Go listen to it if you like. She made some questionable points, but at least somebody is
questionable is a good way to put it.
Yeah, somebody's at least trying to diagnose publicly, and she definitely made a lot of valid points. So check that out. I'll give her an OG because she is trying to at least help Republicans learn how to help themselves. She is a committee person.
If that is her goal, I mean, I've listened a couple times. Questionable is a kind word, I think. Okay. But if her intentions are good, I don't know her, so I'll trust what you're saying. That if this is with good intentions, then I do hope that continues. But yeah, I've tried to listen a few times. It's been rough.
Okay, I hear you.
Out of respect for the office and maybe not the person, I'm going to do a clown moment. And that would have been when our governor sat at the podium and said what he said in front of his audience there. Not only the fact that he said it, but the reaction that the crowd gave him was disgraceful. And then to say afterwards that was just in the heat of the moment, and I just felt that. I guarantee you he practiced that in the mirror time and time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's absolutely standing in front of the mirror practicing these lines.
Yeah. Don't tell us that was off of the moment kind of thing. That we don't believe that. And I would say my OGs.
Just real quick, Jason. I want to echo you because that was my clown too. So let me just echo you, which is the same person who keeps lecturing Republicans about our rhetoric, the same person that texted John Kern and Tommy McCombie and demanded that they speak out. This is the same guy who continued to lecture us. Yet over and over, you see him ratcheting up the rhetoric. He told Trump and all of his Republican allies to F all the way off at a gathering of teachers and got a standing ovation for it. Like, this is the guy who keeps lecturing us. I'm sick and tired of it. So yeah, my clown as well.
Okay. And then my OGs would be the Senate Republican staff communications. When them gentlemen and gals come out of the adjournment there on Friday, they had a message out there on the things that had taken place the last 4 hours. They did a masterful job. The senators did a masterful job explaining what took place the last 4 hours. They did a great job. We need to message just like that from now until the election.
All right. Hopefully we'll see it. It's a good sign. Any other thoughts on OGs, clowns? I've only got a few this week. Michael, you got anything?
I was going to say J.B. Pritzker for sure, not only for that comment, but a reporter asked him about gerrymandering in Illinois and if he was going to try to, redraw the maps one more time. And he said, well, we're just waiting to see what Indiana does. So I guess he's still holding out hope for to do something, even though we have the worst rated map in the country.
At least one of the worst, yeah. And I mean, we've talked about it. Pritzker almost has to do it because the poor guy can't even get his name mentioned in these polls nationwide for who's on the radar for Democrat for president. So he's like the kid in the back of the room. Me. Oh, I'll gerrymander if you'll talk about me. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's going to find some way to be relevant on this. All right, we got covered my clowns, so I've just got two OGs. Lou Sandoval spent 2 years at the Illinois Chamber. He's left that position. Dan Wagner, the board chair, is going to be interim. I just want to say thanks to Lou. He's been on the podcast a few times. He's been a friend for a long time, and I know he put in his heart and soul into that job for 2 years. Certainly hope he'll stick around. He's a great voice for fiscal responsibility in this state. So thanks to Lou for his work at the Illinois Chamber. And then this one's not even mine. It's my wife's, though I echo it. It's pretty good. The foreign minister of Denmark gifted the foreign foreign minister of Egypt a Lego pyramid set. And I'll have Lane bring up a photo and post. You see the bright smiles. This is proof that world peace could be achieved because of Lego. Anybody who knows me knows I love building with Lego. So any excuse to use it. But I'm surprised that Denmark hasn't done this more. I feel like they could be doing this with Lego all around the world, and then getting all sorts of support from countries for handing them Lego sets. This just seems crazy that they haven't been doing it. But OG from my wife, and I'll echo it. All right, we're going to close with our closing thoughts. Thank you to everybody for your time this week. We'll let our guests go last. Michael, you were okay this week, man, but still need you to punch it up. You can kick us off on your closing thoughts.
No, well, petitions, the filing's done. It's challenge season. Hopefully you don't get challenged. If you do, brace yourself, because that's a rough deal. And it's just time to start getting our ducks in a row for this next election. And I guess looking for a treasurer candidate still. So if we can even slate, I don't even know if that's allowed.
I mean, you have to do a write-in at this point, probably. But
well.
All right, Chris, your final thoughts. Redeem Michael here. He's a little snoozy. What do you got?
If you are one of those lucky candidates like Representative Bunting here, who doesn't have an opponent for either his primary or general election, please take some time this weekend. Take care of yourself. Sleep in. Go see a concert. Yeah. I'm planning on seeing a concert.
I'm sure he does. I'm sure Jason doesn't have any work to do this weekend.
Yeah. But I'm going to a concert on Saturday, or maybe I'm not. Maybe I'll still be looking at petitions and I got to cancel my concert. Either way, if you have nothing to do this weekend, enjoy yourself. If you have things to do this weekend, do them. Get them done so you can actually. What the hell are you even
talking about? I don't even know where you're going with this, John.
I'm just telling you, if you have nothing to do this weekend,
if you have plans, do your plans. If you have no plans, don't do your plans. What the heck is this wheat sauce? John, save us here. What are your final thoughts?
Yes, final thoughts. We all know Governor J.B. Pritzker has presidential ambitions. This week was not a good week for those ambitions. We know he doesn't get above 4% in any nationwide poll, but every time Gavin Newsom has a win, and he did with Prop 50, that's a nail in the coffin for Governor Pritzker's presidential ambitions. The coffin will be completely nailed if he cannot get Lieutenant Governor Stratton across the Democratic primary finish line in first place. But every time Gavin Newsom has a win, and Newsom even went at Pritzker indirectly this week saying, all right, Democrats, Illinois, step up. Pritzker is losing ground again, even more ground in the presidential field for 28.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it will look real weak for Pritzker if he can't get Stratton through in the Illinois Senate Democratic primary. Representative Bunting, I was going to say this. Chris stole my thunder. Congratulations on not pulling an opponent. With that, you get to close out our episode. Your final thoughts.
Well, as my mentor, Representative Severin, said in February of 23, when you're in the majority, you legislate. When you're in the minority, we've got to communicate, we've got to educate. And that's something that we've got to do for the next 12 months until the general election here. We've got to win races. In order for us to be relevant in Springfield, we have to win races. We've got to get out of the super minority. We've got to win races to do it. We've got to message for the next 12 months. And then we've got to be have each other's backs, make the trips. I may not have a candidate in the primary or in the general, but I guarantee you I will be going up and helping colleagues get across the finish line. We all need to work together. Hope for the best. That's all we can do.
Work our butts off and hope for the best. Yep. Yeah, and I think right now the message to Republicans is we got to get better at that, work our butts off. Get off his social media and go out there and go talk to some voters, because you're not going to win just making your 76th post to Facebook. But you could win if you go out and talk to 76 voters at their doorsteps. Now, actually, we got a chance at winning. With that, I'm going to close on the episode. It was too long, but we had 3 headliner issues, so I'm not surprised. But thank you to Jason. Thank you to John. I know this was extra amount of your time that you just contributed to our audience. So thank you for that. We will be back next week with the smoke-filled room. As you see, thanks to the time change, I'm going to be sitting out in the dark smoking my cigars during these podcasts, but I'm going to stick with it because once it gets cold, I get no cigars for like 5 months. So with that, we will catch you all next week on the smoke-filled room.